This week, we're going back to competitive Magic the Gathering and checking in on the current regional qualifier season to see how the modern format is shaping up since Pro Tour Barcelona concluded back in August. While it's almost certainly no surprise to anyone who plays Modern, the most popular and successful deck is still Rakdos Scam, making up a massive 23% of the tournament metagame over the last 2 weeks. However, the rest of the field is certainly divided after that, with Rhinos and 4 or 5 color Omnath making up around 7% respectively, followed by Murktide, Mono Green Tron, Burn, Yawgmoth, and Hammer Time decks making up another 5 to 6% each. After these top decks, the format splinters into a dozen different decks snapping at the heels of Tier 1. While they may not be the most played decks in the format, any of these Tier 1.5 or Tier 2 decks is very capable of putting up strong finishes at even the largest of modern events. So let's go a little bit deeper on some of them. The first is Living End, which captured both first and second place at the 403-player Mana Trader Series tournament last week. Playing a graveyard-based combo which is difficult to disrupt, especially if players leave their sideboard graveyard hate cards at home, the Living End deck can quickly set up by filling their graveyard with cheap cycling creatures in the first couple of turns, then resolving a cascade spell like Shardless Agent or Violent Outburst, which can only cascade into Living End, sweeping your opponent's creatures while putting all of your own creatures from the graveyard into play. The deck is consistent, powerful, and has a positive match against the format boogeyman Rakdos Scam. While susceptible to dedicated graveyard hate cards, most decks in the current modern metagame aren't focused on attacking graveyards, which gives the Living End decks the breathing room they need to execute their plan. Another deck that isn't seeing much play, but has a fantastic win rate against Rakdos Scam, is Hardened Scales. This deck can snowball out of control very quickly by dumping its hand on the battlefield and rapidly making its creatures big enough to survive a Fury. Urza Saga is incredible here, alongside new addition Agatha's Soul Cauldron, giving any of your creatures the Walking Ballista ability to blast your opponents down to 0 very quickly. With artifact-based decks not seeing much play, the artifact hate cards in the sideboard of most decks are at an all-time low, allowing Hardened Scales to be a punishing strategy that lines up quite well against some of the top decks. The final deck which did well last week, despite not being on many players' radars, is Scapeshift. That's right, Valakut is back, as a tweaked version of Scapeshift made the top 4 of the modern 10K in Dallas last week, running 0 basic mountains. Scapeshift, another deck that has benefited immensely from the newly printed card draw engine Up the Beanstalk, is a combo deck that typically tries to set up a situation in which it resolves its namesake spell with 7 lands on the battlefield, allowing its pilot to simultaneously fetch a couple of Valakut the Molten Pinnacle and a bunch of mountains to kill the opponent on the spot. However, the version that did well last week ran no basic mountains, instead relying on the tri-lands with their basic types to fuel its spells. This enables Bring to Light as an additional tutor for Scapeshift, as well as free removal spells like Solitude and Leyline Binding, which really fuel the Up the Beanstalks. This, in addition to Teferi Time Raveler to bounce the Beanstalks, creates a ton of card advantage for the Scapeshift player and allows them to win games even when they can't combo off. While there are a ton of other powerful modern decks out there lurking just below the surface of Tier 1, it may take some more tuning or some new cards from an up-and-coming set to push them into the limelight. As the modern RCQ season continues, we'll try and keep up with the changes and innovations that pop up. And if you have any suggestions for decks you'd like to see showcased on Magic Insider, let us know in the comments below.